What's up, everybody? So we're back out in the shop with another Shop Talk Tuesday, and in this episode we are working on the Recurve chopper that we forged in a live stream a couple of weekends ago. Now, it's going to be a pretty simple little setup with this. We're going to be doing the heat treat, we're going to be doing grinding, we're going to be doing the hand sanding, all that stuff to get it to look like what you saw in the thumbnail when you clicked on the video. That is the goal for this episode. You know, throw a little hints here and there on how I do some of this stuff, and then kind of show you how it looks at the end. That's the goal. Let's go ahead, let's jump into it and get this thing knocked out. So we're going to be using a 3/16 inch drill bit for the first two holes that we drill, and then we're going to be using a 1/4 inch drill bit for the last hole for a lanyard tube. Now what I'm doing is over that middle hole, which there's not going to be a pin in, we're going to go ahead and grind in a fuller that will let the epoxy transfer from one side of the tang to the other and create a little pocket of epoxy that will help us get a really good bond with our handle scales. Now we're just flattening our tang to make sure that it's nice and smooth so that the handle scales will match up to it real well. And right here we want to go ahead and use a used 36 grit belt to cut this 90-degree angle down to a 45-degree bevel. And what we're doing is we're just grinding down to that center edge that I scribed. And what it's going to do is give us a nice even edge thickness all the way down the blade prior to grinding in the main bevels. That way we're set up for success in grinding our bevels. Now we can go ahead and grind in our actual bevels. And what I'm going to show you here is the entire bevel grinding process with this 36 grit belt. What I'm going to be doing is something slightly different than what I typically do. I saw Neil Kamamura do this where he actually split the grinding sections up on one of the kukris that he did. So what I'm going to do is something similar to that. And I'm going to grind in the whole recurve section from the plunge line to about the belly of the end of the recurve. We're going to grind that in, and then what I'm going to end up doing is grinding the area from the recurve section to the tip separately. And then I'm going to come back and blend them together, because I have more of a flat grind on the recurve section and more of a convex grind on the actual tip section of this blade. So I'm going to try and show you the whole entire process here. That way you can actually see exactly how I ground it. I think it's about 4.5 minutes worth of video, but I think you'll actually appreciate being able to see how I did the whole entire process here. Now for the heat treat process of this, we're going to be doing a 1600 degree normalizing cycle where we heat it up and we let it cool outside the forge. And then we're going to do a grain refinement cycle, bringing it up to right at about 1400 degrees and letting it cool outside the forge. And then we're going to bring it up to 1525 degrees and we're going to quench it in 120 degree peanut oil. So just like normal, we're going to take our Nicholson file, file that edge until it starts singing like that, more high-pitched noise. When we get to that point, we know that we're down through that decarb layer. So then we could take something like a 65 HRC file and actually go across the edge. It's not catching at all, so we know we're at least at 65 HRC. Now for this one, I want the blade to be a little bit harder than some choppers might be. I'm actually going for about a 61 to 62 HRC on the edge here. And my goal is to do 325 degrees for 2 hours in the oven as opposed to like 400 degrees because I don't want to bring it down too far. So we're going to do 325 degrees for 2 hours times 2, and then I'll end up file testing it again. I want a 65 to grab, but a 60 to skate. That's my goal there. So we're in between that hardness. And then if I feel like it, I can always blue back the spine and make it a little bit softer. And I might end up doing that to about 4 inches of the actual blade, the spine area. I might end up bluing that back and then going from there. We're going to play that by ear, but for right now, we need to temper this. One of these days on like a post-apocalyptic build or something like that, I actually want to keep this finished. So this is what it looks like after, of course, the quenching and temper and everything like that. I think that looks pretty crazy. Now, for this particular build, I don't think it makes much sense because we're going to get some good contrast out of the forge texture and you know, the satin finish on the bevels and all that stuff. But I think that that actually looks crazy. Now, if I did this and then I did the handle material we're going to put on here, it would have a really cool contrast in colors. But I think we're going to sand it and we're going to call it good there. So let's go ahead, get a little sanding set up, get some hand sanding done, and make this thing look like what I planned on when we started it. So even though I would love to keep this finish on here just because I think it looks chaotic, still going to go ahead and hand sand it. We're going to be starting with 220 grit and then working our way up to 320 grit. And we might go up to 600 grit, I don't know, but we're going to see how it looks after 320 and just kind of go from there. So typically whenever I hand sand things, I use these 2 sanding sticks from Kyle Daly. So this one is just a hard version of it. This one has a softer rubber pad on it. And I use this one on flat grinds, and I'll use this one on more convex areas. But I also use this one to blend things in a little bit. I've been using this one for most of this, so if I'm trying to get that those initial grind lines out, so the grinding lines that we have in here from the 2x72, I use this hard one and I will sand everything out. The reason behind that is, let's say I have a little bit of a low point. As long as I'm sanding it with this little bit wider hard stick, it's going to start blending that in. It's going to start sanding the material around it down as opposed to working down into it, and it just makes the divot worse. You don't want that to happen. You want to be able to come in here and sand this and get everything down to the lowest point, which is the lowest grinding line, maybe even inside of a dip. You want to sand everything around it and get it all down to that depth so that you don't have a weird spot whenever you're looking at the reflection to where you have a little wave. You don't want that to happen. So I'll use this to get everything down nice and even, and then I'll come in with the one with the rubber backer and I'll start smoothing and blending and kind of putting a slight convex on it just a little bit down to the cutting edge. And I use that rubber backer one for that. Whenever I start off, I typically use a 220 grit, which y'all saw initially, and then I'll go up to a 320 grit, and then typically I'll go up to like a 400, then a 600, especially if I'm trying to do a nice satin finish. On this particular one, because of the finish we're going to be going with, I'm actually only doing a 220 grit, and then I'm just going to be going up to a 320 grit, and that's where I'm leaving it to be able to finish the finish. Now, I will come in with a Scotch-Brite pad, and I use the sanding stick, I wrap the Scotch-Brite pad around it, and I come in and I do just strokes towards the end. And that's going to get rid of any little J hooks or anything like that that I might have. I just do solid pulls all the way through with a little bit of CLP. You can also use WD-40 if you want to. That'll help clean it up. So what I'm going to do, now that I'm at 320 grit, which is where I need to start sanding right now because I just got done with that 220, pretty much all of these are going to be starting at the plunge line and working our way forward. Working our way forward. We're not going to be doing the back and forth. All of these are going to be pulls. So we're going to come in here, get up into that plunge line area, and pull forward. Something to note, I'm primarily using just the edges to do this. So I'm coming in, I'm just using the edge to pull down and through this. So once I do a couple of passes, I just turn it over and I come from the other edge. If you come in here and you put it down flat and then start pulling, what's going to end up happening is about right here, you're going to have little J hooks going across there. And then I have to sand those out. So we want to get down into this and then pull. Just with that edge. As you come out to the front, you can flatten it back out. But whenever you're getting into that groove of that plunge line, you just want to use the edge of it. And then as you come forward, you can go ahead and lay it flat. Once you stop being able to sand things, just switch to another piece of the paper and keep going. A little bit of CLP. Go from the Recurve Soak forward. That's looking good. Nice clean bevels. No divots or indentions or anything like that. Just nice, crisp, and clean. You know, one of the things that I want to end up getting is an actual punch or Maker's Mark stamp thing that I can actually forge into the steel whenever I'm actually doing the forging process. I kind of want to do that and try that out. I've been etching a Maker's Mark for a long time now, but I actually want to do it in the forging process and see how that goes. This is pretty simple. We just want to go ahead, get it etched into place, and then all we take is some Scotch-Brite and our CLP. Just put a little coat on it. Take our little Scotch-Brite pad that we used to do the finish on here, and just maybe not hit the camera, but go back over it, clean it up. And there we go. We're left with a nice, crisp, clean Maker's Mark over here. Well guys, you might be thinking right now, okay, it's time for a Vinegar Soak, because I do that on a lot of my knives lately, but we're not going to do that. The finish that we have on here is the finish that we want. It looks really good. One of the things that kind of stands out here is if there was a wave or a dip in the bevels, you would be able to see it whenever I'm going through. You see this little shine right here? That stays nice and uniform all the way throughout the bevels whenever I'm doing this. So the bevels are nice, clean looking, and I love the transition, as always, from the Brute to Forge down into some nice, clean satin bevels. Both sides. I think it looks really, really, really good, and makes this Maker's Mark stand out a ton. And what I'm gonna like about this is just dark enough right here so that whenever we do the handle material, which is gonna be in next week's video, that's gonna be this black and G10 that we have right here. So it's gonna be a nice little contrast. So black, jade. I haven't decided exactly if I'm going to just do the black liner and the jade, or if I'm gonna do jade, black, jade. Y'all have seen me do that a couple of times. Whenever I do that, it makes it to where there's like a line in the middle of it, and it puts a real cool border, but I don't know if I want the handle that thick. So I'm gonna play with that, and I'm gonna try to decide what I wanna do. But that's gonna be next week's video, where we actually put the handle on this and finish it. Now, one of the things that I kind of want to hit on again here is the finishes that you could put on these blades are pretty simple. All this was a 220 grit to get rid of the grinding lines, a 320 grit, and then a medium Scotch-Brite. And that's all we did to get that finish right there. We didn't need to do anything crazy. We didn't need to go up to like 600 grit and then come back down to a certain grit. That's 220, 320, and a medium Scotch-Brite, and we got a nice set of bevels on there. So it doesn't have to be super crazy. You don't have to spend 12 hours hand sanding and buffing and polishing and all that stuff. I didn't use any buffing compound on this. I won't use any buffing compound on this at all. I might use it on the handle, but there won't be any of that on the actual blade itself. But it's looking real good. Nice and easy. Next episode, we're going to be doing a handle, and then we're actually going to be doing a live stream this weekend. So it's going to be just like we have been doing the last ones. This live stream, we're going to be forging a cleaver out of a very thick piece of material. It's going to be a lot of material moving. It's going to be a fun process, and it is going to be a pain in the butt, but we are going to make it happen. Now, the one that we just got done doing is actually turning out really cool. That's this one right here. This is a really cool looking profile. It is super thick. I think that's going to look really good whenever we get it done. So they're pretty cool. The ones that I'm doing on Saturday live streams are going to end up being in their own videos. That's what we did with this one. But guys, that's the end of this episode. If you would, give the video a thumbs up, subscribe, do all that stuff. And I'll catch y'all on the Saturday live stream. Make sure y'all come and hang out. Make sure y'all come and talk. I'll see you then. Y'all stay safe. Catch you next time.